Beyond the asteroid belt, where the warmth of the sun becomes a distant memory, lies a realm of gas giants and frozen worlds. In this eternal twilight of the outer solar system, one colossus dominates the darkness: Jupiter. A swirling sphere of storms and unfathomable gravity, it holds court over a miniature solar system of its own. Here, orbiting the king of planets, we find an intricate dance of moons, each with its own story, its own mysteries, and its own violent history. In the early 17th century, humanity first gazed through primitive glass lenses and discovered 4 wandering stars orbiting this giant. We now know them as the Galilean moons: Callisto, Ganymede, Europa, and Io. Among these 4 worlds, one stands apart. While its siblings are locked in deep freezes, encased in thick shells of ancient water ice, this innermost moon is a world of absolute, relentless fire. It is a place where the ground itself is alive. This is Io. It is the innermost of Jupiter's Galilean moons, and the 4th largest moon in our entire solar system. But mere size does not begin to capture the true nature of this chaotic world. From a distance, its surface resembles a diseased canvas of yellows, reds, and blacks, a testament to a violent, continuous transformation that defies everything we expect to find in the freezing depths of the outer planets. It is a place of endless destruction and rebirth. To understand Io is to confront a world that refuses to die, locked in a permanent state of agony. As the innermost large moon, it is bound closest to Jupiter, trapped in a gravitational embrace that defines its very existence. Here, in the shadow of the largest planet in our solar system, Io orbits with a furious intensity. There is no peace on this world. There is only the constant, overwhelming presence of its massive host. When planetary scientists first began to study the moons of the outer solar system, they expected dead, frozen worlds. And for the most part, they were right. Beyond the frost line, water ice is as common as rock. But Io breaks every rule. Instead of a thick, icy crust, Io is composed primarily of dense, heavy silicate rock. It is a terrestrial world, misplaced among the frozen satellites of the gas giants, a world forged in heat rather than cold. Deep beneath its scarred, sulfurous exterior lies a heart of unimaginable heat. Io harbors a massive core of molten iron, or perhaps iron sulfide. This dense liquid center is a roaring furnace, driving processes that reshape the surface above it every single day. While its sister moon Europa hides a liquid water ocean beneath miles of ice, Io hides an ocean of magma, a churning inferno that makes it unique among the moons of the outer planets. This stark contrast between Io and the other outer solar system moons is a profound mystery solved only by looking at its environment.
500 kilometers
While Ganymede and Callisto are mostly water ice, frozen solid for billions of years, Io is devoid of water. Any moisture it might have once possessed was boiled away eons ago, leaving behind a desiccated rocky husk. It is a world stripped down to its bare, metallic, and silicate essentials. The sheer density and composition of Io make it more akin to the terrestrial planets of the inner solar system, like Earth or Venus, than to its own Jovian siblings. But unlike our home planet, Io has no oceans, no vegetation, and no sprawling continents. It is a world of pure, unadulterated geology, where the rocks themselves are in a constant, violent state of flux, driven by forces far greater than anything experienced on Earth. This molten interior manifests on the surface in the most dramatic way imaginable. Io is not just active. It is a world consumed by fire. Scattered across its colorful, blistered landscape are over 400 active volcanoes. At any given moment, dozens of them are erupting simultaneously, tearing the crust apart and spilling fresh magma onto the plains. It is a planetary engine of destruction, running at maximum capacity without pause. Nowhere else in our solar system do we see this level of geological fury. Earth, with all its tectonic power, pales in comparison to the relentless eruptions of this tiny moon. Io holds the undisputed title of the most geologically active object in the entire solar system. Its surface is constantly being paved over by fresh lava flows, erasing craters and scars as quickly as they form, making its surface one of the youngest we have ever observed. These 400 volcanoes are not just small vents. They are massive, continent-spanning complexes that continuously vomit the moon's interior out into the void. The sheer volume of magma extruded onto the surface is staggering, enough to bury the entire moon in a new layer of rock every few thousand years. It is a world turning itself inside out, trapped in a relentless cycle of eruption, cooling, and burial. What could possibly drive such extreme geological activity on a moon so far from the heat of the sun? The answer lies not within Io itself, but in the merciless gravitational tug-of-war in which it is trapped. Io is caught in a deadly celestial dance. On one side is the overwhelming mass of Jupiter, pulling the moon inward with crushing force. On the other side are the outer Galilean moons, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. As Io orbits Jupiter, it is frequently overtaken and pulled by the gravity of these outer larger moons. This rhythmic gravitational interaction forces Io into a slightly elliptical or oval-shaped orbit. This means that its distance from Jupiter is constantly changing. Sometimes it is pulled terrifyingly close to the giant planet, and other times it swings further away. This constant shifting is the engine of Io's torment. Because of this elliptical orbit, the gravitational pull from Jupiter varies wildly. As Io moves closer, Jupiter's gravity pulls harder. As it moves away, the pull weakens. This alternating force does not just affect Io's orbit, it affects the physical rock of the moon itself. The interior of Io is subjected to immense, varying pressure, creating an effect known as tidal heating. Tidal heating is the result of immense internal friction. As the moon is stretched and squeezed by these competing gravitational forces, the solid rock of its mantle rubs together, generating unimaginable amounts of heat. It is exactly like bending a piece of metal back and forth until it becomes hot to the touch. But on Io, this process happens on a planetary scale, generating enough thermal energy to melt solid rock and power 400 volcanoes. The physical toll of this gravitational abuse is staggering to comprehend. The solid ground of Io is not solid at all. It is a flexible, moving membrane. Jupiter's gravity continually stretches and squeezes the entire moon as it travels along its elliptical path. This is not a subtle microscopic shifting. It is a violent, massive deformation of the entire planetary body. At the peak of this gravitational stress, the solid rock surface of Io bulges outward, rising by up to 100 meters, or 330 feet. Imagine the ground beneath your feet slowly rising to the height of a 30-story skyscraper, only to slowly subside again as the moon moves further from Jupiter. This happens continuously, with every single orbit, relentless and unyielding. This 100-meter tidal bulge is the heartbeat of Io's destruction. The constant flexing shatters the crust, creating deep fissures and faults that act as conduits for the molten magma trapped below. The crust is literally cracked open by Jupiter's gravity, providing the hundreds of volcanoes with an endless supply of pressurized, superheated liquid rock, ready to burst onto the surface. When this pressurized magma finally reaches the surface, it does not merely ooze out. It explodes with a violence rarely seen in the cosmos. Volcanoes on Io eject massive plumes of material high into the vacuum of space. Unlike terrestrial volcanoes that emit ash and rock, Io's eruptions are dominated by sulfur and sulfur dioxide, painting the landscape in vivid, toxic hues of yellow and red. Because Io's gravity is so weak, and because there is no thick atmosphere to slow them down, these eruption plumes reach staggering heights. They soar up to 500 kilometers, or 300 miles, above the surface of the moon. To put that into perspective, if a volcano on Earth erupted with such force, its plume would reach far beyond the International Space Station into the deep vacuum of low Earth orbit. These colossal fountains of sulfur dioxide gas and dust freeze instantly in the frigid cold of space, forming beautiful umbrella-shaped canopies that eventually snow back down onto the surface. This continuous fallout is what gives Io its distinct, vibrant colors. The moon is constantly repainting itself, burying its older terrain beneath a fresh blanket of sulfuric frost with every massive eruption. Among all the fiery calderas on this tortured moon, one stands absolute. It is known as Loki Patera, the most powerful volcano on Io. But Loki is not a mountain of ash like we see on Earth. It is a patera, a massive depression in the crust filled with a terrifying, active lava lake. It is a sea of liquid fire, stretching for hundreds of kilometers across the moon's surface. Loki Patera does not just sit quietly. It undergoes episodic overturning of its crust. As the surface of the lava lake cools, it forms a thick, dark crust. Eventually, this crust becomes too dense and fractures, sinking violently back into the magma below. This exposes a fresh, glowing layer of molten rock and a massive wave of fire that sweeps across the entire lake, radiating immense amounts of heat into space. Despite the intense heat radiating from its volcanoes, the overall environment of Io is incredibly cold, sitting in the deep shadow of the outer solar system. This cold creates a bizarre and fragile atmosphere. Io possesses an extremely thin atmosphere, consisting almost entirely of sulfur dioxide gas, vented directly from its hundreds of active volcanoes. It is a tenuous, toxic veil clinging to a world of fire. But this atmosphere is not permanent. Every day, as Io orbits, it passes behind Jupiter, plunging into the giant planet's immense shadow. Cut off from the sun's faint warmth, the temperature plummets instantly. In this sudden, brutal cold, the entire sulfur dioxide atmosphere temporarily collapses. It freezes solid, falling to the ground as a layer of white frost for about 2 hours, until Io emerges back into the sunlight, and the atmosphere sublimates back into gas. Even when the atmosphere is gaseous, it is under constant attack. Jupiter is not just a gravitational giant. It possesses a magnetic field of terrifying power. This rapidly spinning magnetosphere acts like a cosmic particle accelerator, and Io is caught right in the middle of it. Jupiter's magnetic field relentlessly blasts the moon, stripping up to 1,000 kilograms of sulfur and oxygen material from Io's atmosphere every single second. This stolen material does not simply vanish. As it is pulled away, it becomes highly ionized, trapped by Jupiter's magnetic field. This creates a massive donut-shaped cloud of intense, glowing radiation known as the Io plasma torus. This torus completely encircles Jupiter, a glowing monument to the slow, agonizing destruction of Io's atmosphere, feeding the gas giant's magnetic environment with a constant stream of heavy ions. The interaction between Io and Jupiter's magnetic field is not a one-way street. It generates an electromagnetic phenomenon of staggering proportions. As Io orbits, it physically cuts across Jupiter's invisible magnetic lines of force. Because Io has a metallic core and is enveloped in ionized gas, it acts like a massive electrical generator tearing through a magnetic field. This motion develops a staggering 400,000 volts of electrical potential across the moon itself. This immense voltage drives a massive electric current, an unimaginable 3 million amperes, flowing along the magnetic field lines directly between Io and Jupiter's polar regions. This current creates intense auroras on Jupiter, a spectacular, invisible tether of pure energy binding the tormented moon to its colossal master. Io remains one of the greatest paradoxes of the cosmos. It is a world of freezing shadows and liquid fire, a tiny moon tearing itself apart in a desperate gravitational tug-of-war. Bound eternally to Jupiter, stripped of its atmosphere, and forced to generate oceans of magma, Io is a testament to the extreme, violent, and awe-inspiring forces that govern our solar system. A tortured world, burning brightly in the deep, cold dark.
If you enjoy this content and want to see more, please consider subscribing. A quick tap on the like button also helps us learn what topics you like best. Thank you for watching this video, and see you in the next one.